Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of Two Wizards and a Mic, where a couple of old dudes talk about D&D, and they hope that what they say makes for a better game at your table, because that's what this is all about. Because as we always tell people, it's just a game. That's, of course, a lead into what we're talking about today. Um, and I'm just going to let Andrew go. Ready, Andrew? Oh, educate the masses.
Well, quick update for the Kickstarters. So
Right?
we have the 3 adventure books. So Mushroom King should arrive at the office, and it should be all ready to go because the last mistake was the printer's error. So we expect that
Okay.
any day, and once we get it, we can immediately start ordering books. So most people should get their Mushroom King adventures in March. Second book is the Rivenhelm book, and there's lots of changes with that. The manuscript is done, the maps are done, the layout is being finished, and Travis has done most of the art. In fact, it happened most of it today. So a lot of the creatures that you just saw in that adventure, Shane, they actually have images, have illustrations as of today.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. The third adventure comes to BackerKit in 2 weeks. February 25th, we launch Ghosts of Wrath, and you can sign up for that launch below. And right now, there are 180 people signed up for that launch for the third adventure. So
Very
that's
good.
the Kickstarter updates, and soon to be just called BackerKit updates. The topic today is myths in D&D, and we're not talking about mythology. We're talking about beliefs that are not true about D&D and that have greatly influenced the update to 5e. And the first thing we can
Yes.
look at is that the 5e crew who originally made it in 2014, almost all of them are gone. And many people, including myself who likes old school games, not everybody, but many people think 5e mechanically is actually a really good system. And I think the 2014 version, it is. That's true. And objectively, there, like I said, there's a lot of people who feel that way. Style wise and content wise, I think it's got something, got some issues there, which you can change at your table easily. The problem is most of that crew were fired, let go, or left D&D, and now the new people are making it are not a very experienced crew. And it's not surprising that this new update has lots of holes in it and has lots of issues and has not sold well. They've tried to make it sound like it's doing well, but that's not that's not what I've heard. If you really look at the numbers, I'll give you one example. So there's about 20 million people on D&D Beyond, right? Signed up like subscribers.
Right.
They said that there's around 3.5 million characters that are being created on D&D Beyond. And they were saying how this is great, showing that people are using the new rules. Well, think about that. So most people make multiple characters, probably 4, 5, 6 characters, sometimes more of them. So that would mean if all the people who were subscribing to D&D Beyond made new characters, that's 20 times 5, 6, 120, 130, 140 million characters. They only have 3.5. So it's actually incredibly low.
Um, to me, uh, watching a couple of the videos about the new rules, that's not surprising at all
Mhm.
because when you have a new product release and you have to go backwards in time to provide them with the old stuff that they are used to, and that happens very, very quickly. I don't know. I I'm trying not to crap all over Wizards of the Coast because I know that they have a puppet master above them that has a very different focus on what toys are. And D&D is not a toy. It is not something that you buy from the store, play with it for a while, get good at whatever it is that you do with the game, and then go out and get the upgraded toy. Because I have played games recently where we're still using rules for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Um, so it's very odd that you have such a passionate uh, fan base. Although I wouldn't call us fan as a fan base, that players that are so ready to say no, don't do what you're doing because it's not fair to, like, I'm trying to think of, like, it's not a card game, or it's not a this is not, Hungry Hippos, where you go out and buy a new Hungry Hippos because it has a different colored hippo, set of hippos. This is something that we delve into our minds to play. Like, we add way more to the game than the rules do. The rules are guidelines. They tell us how to formulate a game. They tell us how to roll dice, how games of chance within those rules allow us to, fight, allow us to heal, allow us to cast spells, all kinds of things. But the reality is that we don't need Wizards of the Coast. We could easily go out tomorrow and make our own rules for any game, no matter what age we are. But we like to support, or we used to like to support TSR, then Wizards of the Coast, and whatever other iterations it's had in the past, because they were lovers of the game as well. The people that were creating those games, they took an older game with some very specific rules and thought, wouldn't it be cool if? And they thought, let's sit down and come up with some cool rules back in the day, in the late 70s, and let's actually make something that a lot of people can play, not just us. And that carried over, into the products that eventually were released, because you could tell just by reading them and interacting with them that these were people that were interested in the creative process. They were interested in, how do we tell these cool stories, and how do we fight? How do you take a sword and stab it into a dragon or get eaten by a dragon? How do you do that in a fun way? Where Wizards, at least right now, they don't give a shit about the game. They don't care about the game. They care about releasing a product that is somewhat different because they want to justify their existence, rather than, at least from my perspective, rather than giving a crap and actually saying, what, let's play that game. Let's try these new rules we're coming up with, and listen to everybody else who's at the table. And because I consider us as players and whatnot to actually be sitting at that table, which we have now seen happen. That there are, there's so much content being generated around this release. It is shocking. I don't see that with a lot of other games. Like, there's plenty of other games that get released all the time, and I think there's maybe a handful of games out there that actually get this kind of response. So yes, basically that's just a long-winded way of saying I agree, Andrew.
Well, it's interesting. You say, it'd be nice if the game was made by lovers of the game. Well, that means that you actually have to know what the game is. So I think
Yeah.
second myth is that's relevant about this new update is that orcs have been removed from the monster manual. So somebody who loves the game, who knows the game, would know that this is one of the most important monsters, most important humanoid races. And really, it's just a simple lack of education and knowledge about games, about fantasy literature, that they don't understand that this is a fantasy creature and that it's an archetype of evil. It's a fantasy creature, it's a made up imaginary creature. And there is nothing racist about it. The only person who would see that is somebody who is racist. It's an imaginary monster. And the fact they don't have one of the most basic creatures in the monster manual is telling, either through, like I said, lack of knowledge or intentionally um, just virtue signaling, which is the other popular issue at the moment.
I tried to find a reference to why, like, what was the actual reason? Is that
Mhm.
really the reason? Is that they just felt it was an evil thing?
No, from what I've heard, because they've added orcs to the player races in the player's handbook, they don't want them seen as a monster. But that's either, as I said, complete, ignorance as far as what an orc is, or it's virtue signaling, neither which are great things to have in the game. And it's really bizarre. And it kind of, it also, it does connect to a lot of what has been done with the new edition, where many villains have been glorified. So Strahd is being glorified, the Beholder is being glorified, witches are being glorified, devils are being glorified, and now orcs are. And it's interesting that, the original game, and really, I think most people who still play it, it's heroic fantasy, but the people who've been writing the main content recently, the last few years, don't seem to be on the side of the heroes.
That might be true. I mean, it is like they are trying to sanitize something that doesn't require the sanitization. Like
Yeah,
it's kind of like it's kind of like those books the children write. The
yeah,
parents write about
that's exactly what it
how,
is.
exactly. We don't need parents. And I mean, here's the thing. I think that ultimately, if this kind of stuff pushes forward, you're going to see a lot more work being done into creating game systems that don't include this. I mean, there's so many already. I'm not surprised if people are turning around going, hey, what's that insert gaming system here? Hey, they seem to really kind of seems pretty smooth. Let's try that and, get away from this, I don't know, garbage.
Well, the thing
I'm trying to be
is,
positive, but I'm not having a very good success rate.
yeah, I think most people who are playing 5e are still playing 2014 rules, and I think those rules are really good. And there is a reason why D&D has always been the number one RPG. I mean, Pathfinder caught up briefly, but since the mid 70s, D&D has dominated. And it's because it's a good game. It's really good. And it's first edition was well designed, fifth edition, the original version was well designed. I don't know much about 2, 3, and 4 because I wasn't playing, but I guess it seems like it did fairly well, maybe except for fourth edition. Um, the third,
Fourth definitely seemed to fail. Yes, I would
yeah,
agree. And
well,
do you think we're seeing that again?
it's hard to say because there are other systems, but like I said, there's a reason why D&D has always been the king, and it's because the game was really good and the mechanics are really good, and it was a kind of it's a genre that a lot of people connect to. There's not as many sci-fi RPG players, like tabletop players. There's just not, or westerns, or apocalyptic games. There's just not. There's way more fantasy players. So for some reason, that is more popular. Um, so I'm not sure. I think, a lot of people are just ignoring the 2024 rules, like us. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. It'd be great if somebody else bought the game, but we'll have to see how that goes. Um, yeah, I don't see any of the others really. I mean, there's a lot of clones of the game. There's a lot of games that try to do what D&D does, but I don't think they do. Um, I mean, some are so close that really it's pretty much the same game. It's just has a different name. Um,
Right.
the other myth, the third one, is about how drow, can't be talked about, used in adventures, can't be illustrated because they're racist. Well, that again is ridiculous for anybody who knows that it's a fantasy race and that it's an archetype of evil. And the light and dark in fantasy genre and literature is not about skin color being evil and good. It's representing light and dark in terms of light. That light is more positive connotations than darkness. That's what it's about. That's why we've always had that, like Darth Vader and all that kind of, cowboys with black hats. And the light and dark is to do with light, not other elements. So that's
Yeah.
another really ridiculous one. People are actually like afraid to publish or illustrate drow now because of the mob, right? Um, Another myth is about how D&D was always problematic, in that it was these gatekeepers and these white guys who didn't let girls play and other people play. That is, as we talked about before a few times, ridiculous. That is not. That is, rewriting history. We would have loved, the typical player, which back then was, you know, um, white teenage boy. We would have loved anybody else to be at our table. We were looking for players, right? We would have loved if girls wanted to play. Um, and I have never heard of a table back then who would exclude people. Never. For any reason. We were looking for players. We were, and you never publicized usually that you did play D&D. It was not considered cool. And it was the outsiders who were playing it, not for the most part, not the popular kids. Um, and so that's another one that's just not true. And people have tried to rewrite the story. Um, and
Yeah.
the other thing they've tried to say is that it's changed a lot. It hasn't really. Look at video from the major conventions. Guess what you're going to see? Pretty much the same crowd,
Yeah.
and they've tried to say that it's different, and they've tried to say that we're changing things because there's a new world and new players. And I heard on, I can't remember which YouTube channel, but they were talking about the art in one of the new books. I think in the Player's Handbook, and there were something like 15 images that had Caucasian males. Guess how many had women or people of color?
Let me think.
Over 100. Over
Wow.
100. So there is an edition where there's been problems with people gatekeeping and keeping people out because of their race and their sex. It's now. It's not from the 70s. It's not from the 80s. It's now.
I
And
would
it's
agree
not.
because I never, growing up playing the game, uh, there was always a mix of people from all
Yeah.
over the place. Like it
Yeah.
was never. I mean, sure, I suspect that there probably were, you know, people out there that were playing that gatekeeper role, but it wasn't the community as a whole. That was like those were, I actually know I know who those people are. They're called dickheads, and you don't want to play with them anyway. Like, why would you play with them? Like, the nice thing about tabletop gaming is that you can play whoever. I mean, or play with whoever because if you are an individual who's a dickhead, then people just don't end up playing with you that often or at all. So, you find friendly. You want to hang out with people that you actually like, because
Yeah.
you don't just show up at a game session and sit down and not talk to anyone and be like, okay, I'm now embodying this character. All right, DM, go. All right, yes, I am addressing the person to my right as this character. But once the gameplay is over, I will not address you again. I will walk to the next room and I will ignore you. Like, what kind of vision of gaming is that? Like, it doesn't it's not like that at all.
Yeah,
But
it was never about identity politics back then. It was about, like it is today for the most part. It was about relationships, about how you got on with people in the group and the dynamic between people, regardless of identity politics, of who they it was about who they really are, not about what they look like or what gender they were. And that is still, you still need you're having you're having a good time playing a game with a group, but there's still dynamics and certain things that you have power power trips and people projecting things, and that the group work, the group dynamic is still the key thing, not identity politics. So
uh,
and it's just a game. I found very few groups where there was a lot of drama, because if it didn't work out, you play with another group of people. Like, it's
yeah.
not there a lot of drama is being inserted. There actually is no drama needed.
No, and I agree, because I find that in the last year or so, I definitely have lost a lot of interest in the drama part. Uh, because I used to be like a lot of people, oh, did you know that insert celebrity name here is blah 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 blah. And but I would say in the last, not the last year, like the last decade, what am I saying? Um, that I've really lost it. Like, sometimes I might get caught up in stuff, but really I have so many other things that I need to be worrying about. That drama and politics between people playing a silly game
Mhm.
is not high on my list. I would rather go to the silly game and have a silly time and enjoy myself,
For
because
sure.
that's the thing. That's what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to have fun. I mean, I've played with DMs and other players who are very much um, they're very regimented and they're very specific in how they deal with players, and it's very much a job to them. Like, it becomes like a job rather than, hi, I'm going to be the DM tonight and I'm going to be playing this adventure with you guys, and here are the things that I've done to prep for this. And if somebody is having, actually, this happened to me once. I showed up to the game, I was ready to play, and I was kind of jazzed about it because we were playing an adventure that I was really into. And we showed up, and somebody was crying, and I'm like, oh, what's going on? Why is this happening? And the person had just found out, like, the day before, that their parents had found out their parent had died. They came to the game anyway, but then realized it was a bad idea, that they were just going to be crying. But the thing was, as soon as that happened, everyone, it didn't matter. The game, we could do that another day. How's it go? I'm sorry, you're like, we all bonded with this individual over this horrible tragedy. And I think we ended up playing like 3 weeks later or something, like a month later. And it happens. Life happens and things go on, and it doesn't have to be always. Uh, you don't have to protect the game from the players. It should be the other way around, I
Yeah.
guess, in some ways.
Yeah.
Um. Anyway.
The other myth, which, and again, a lot of this comes down to really lack of education, lack of knowledge, experience with the game, with fantasy genre. This idea that you have to remove races, and now I think they're called species or something in the new books.
Right.
The idea that the word races is racist, which is really just
It
simply
is not.
dumb. Like it makes no sense at all. I mean, if you want to call them that, sure, but you're just changing it for it's just for show because it doesn't really actually mean anything. Um, the other thing that's being changed is the half elf and the half orc have been removed because hybrid races apparently are racist, which seems actually to me like a racist thing to do. Um, yeah, it's a bizarre decision. Like it seems like that's the opposite of if you're creating a diverse world and you're saying that diverse races are really important to you, why are you removing races that show how diverse the world is?
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, when you're playing this game or living in the world, people have different skin colors, they have different backgrounds, they were raised in certain ways that you might understand, but are always kind of fascinating to learn about. There's all of these things that apparently are bad to know about. And I'll always remember the interview with Denzel Washington from, I don't know, 10 years ago. Um,
Yeah.
and the interviewer wanted to talk about the whole race thing. And he said, "No, I don't. I don't think that we need to really talk about it anymore. It's not. If you want to keep bringing it up, sure, but you're a human being. I'm a human being. We look different. We came from different places. What more do we need to talk about? Hey, you're different. Cool. Hey, do
Yeah.
you want to play the? Do you want to roll your 20-sided dice now?
Yeah.
Like these kinds of things where, um, I understand that there's stuff going on in the world that people feel very polarized, but the problem is that doesn't really apply to the real world. It's in the news, it's all this coverage, blah 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 blah. But at the end of the day, when you walk into a store tomorrow and you're like, I'm gonna go and buy a pack of gum, are you gonna care that the person behind the till is a different colored skin than you? Like, that's not that we don't need that in games. The idea for fantasy is that we are escaping to it. It does not have to reflect reality, and that's kind of the point.
Well, and
And
it
when
is
you're
different.
trying to
Like I
make all
don't
this,
mean seriously. I don't mean it's seriously racist because it is. That's how
well,
silly it got. Because
exactly.
it is a game, and these are made up imaginary creatures that
Yeah.
most of the game we're imagining in our heads.
Well, and that's what I mean. Like, we don't. The world that we inhabit has issues, has all of these things going on. We have all of these thoughts and all these feelings. But when you get to the game table, you know, I I'm not going to be offended that a character. I'm not going to be offended at the Drow. The Drow are just kind of a bunch of dicks that live underground and they want to kill everyone. Well,
Yeah.
okay, fine. I'm going to kill you right back then. It's not like it's not reflection of the world, and it's a reflection of what's going on in a fantasy world. Like it's anyway. So
Yeah.
I'm
Well, and the drow and the orcs representing an archetype of evil. If you remove them, that archetype is still there. Archetypes are
yeah,
indestructible. You're just going to create something else now that replaces it. So it's just a facade. It's just virtue signaling because
and
the
the
substance,
half
the substance doesn't change really.
yeah,
You're just changing the names.
and
Um,
the half elf, the half orc, all of that stuff. Um, being taken out because apparently they're I don't know, problematic. Um, I don't see how. That happens a lot in the world. It happens in nature where you get hybridized animals. Why not hybridize? Like, hey, I'd love to see like a tiefling orc, or oh wait, I can. Like, there's all of these things that you could totally do, but for it not to be represented in the game at all, or to be removed because of whatever perceived issue, that's
well,
it's just weird. That's
it
just
doesn't
weird.
make sense either because tieflings
Mm.
are half fiend, half human, but those are allowed.
Yeah.
So they're
Oh,
constantly,
those are still there. Oh well.
yeah,
Okay then.
there's constantly examples of how they're, a dragonborn are sort of like, in a way, it's like half human, half dragon in a way. Um, it doesn't make sense. Another myth is that the 2014 rules were really badly organized. They were hard to read. The books were not easy for new players to access. And while I
What?
think while I think that everything can be improved on. I don't think they were really badly organized. I think that they were quite easy to use, and it was the most successful edition of D&D and any role-playing game ever around the
Mm.
world, and nobody seemed to have a problem with, like, more people were playing than ever before with these books that weren't organized. So I think that whole idea that the new books are so much better, that's ridiculous too. I mean, of course, there's some little changes you might make to make things a little bit easier, but like kids were playing it, like young kids were playing 5e 2014 and no issues. So
And
that's
the best part about that, about young kids playing it, is they don't have to follow the rules. They could read the rules as much as they can at that young age. And I know I did this. You read the rules, and half of it you're like, huh? Because you're a kid. It was written by an adult. You read the rules, you don't understand them for whatever reason. But here's the thing, didn't prevent us from playing, didn't prevent us from having fun. Like we didn't need to like have uh D&D by paint by numbers,
yeah,
that kind of
exactly. You
feeling.
don't need it
Yeah,
spoon fed to you. Like
exactly.
the rules in first edition were more complicated and it wasn't as efficient. It was much more crunchy. It wasn't that efficient. And like you say, I started, I think, when I was 9 or 10. There were a lot of things we missed and we didn't get 100%,
Oh,
but we
totally.
got we got the key part, and we read those books over and over and over as well as we could do, and we had fun. And like you say, you don't have to use every rule in the game. D&D is not made like that. You can if you want, but you don't have to do that. You can just, if you're having fun, that's the point.
Yeah, and I feel that I mean, here's the thing. I don't have the 2024 rules book player's manual. Um and I don't intend on ever purchasing it because I find that if it's so hard to play a game that I consider to be fun and silly and just kind of goofy, and you could do whatever you want, you could make a floating castle if you felt like it, or you could not. You could sit around and be a farmer and be bored all the time. But the fact is that I have that choice, and I feel like choice is being taken away because apparently I need to be coddled. Because that's the impression, and I'm kind of glad that it's not selling well. Maybe we will see 4.0 all over again, where it didn't sell very well, it went away very quickly, and because I think it wasn't released in like 2009 or 2010 or something, and then 5e came out 2014. Like there wasn't a whole lot of time.
Yeah, it wasn't that
So
much later. And, I think 5e 2014 could potentially last quite a while, and 2024 could just dissolve away. The other myth is that if you have more classes, more races, more subclasses, more feats, more spells, it's going to be a better game. I don't think so. I think
no,
actually,
definitely not.
I
Definitely
think
not.
they've got too many races now. They've added, so they took out half elf. Well, they sort of took out half elf and half orc. You can still technically find a way to put it in there, but now they've added orc and they've added Asimar and they've added Goliath. So they actually have more races, even though they've removed some, and tons of subclasses. And I think there's too much now. I think it's better when things in a game elements have meaning and they have a special quality to them.
Yeah.
If you keep adding more and more to it, it gets diluted.
Yeah, and isn't that what supplements are for? Like to me, the actual core books that we've always called them, core books. There's three of them: the DM, player, and monster. The first monster manual. Except there were more back in the day. But the reality is, they were the core things. They were supposed to be streamlined. They were supposed to be organized. They were supposed. And hey, guess what? They were. And then it's like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could have like a giant race, or we could have like a race of mythical beings, or that have angelic qualities to them, or whatever. Oh yeah, that's a supplement over there. Yeah, it's over there on that shelf. And you know what? I can go and get that book. I can be like, you know what? I want to make one of these characters today. Oh, you know what? There's a third book over there. I could go and oh, look, there's 2 new races in here. I could use those. Like it's like that was. It was always exciting that when a new book was released, that you could actually go and basically create something fresh and new, because inevitably, no matter how fresh and new it is, you come back to be a human fighter. You come back to be a spellcaster. You can go off and you can be excited about all these new things, but I know that for me, I always come back to the very beginning, and it's like, oh wow, I had a really great time playing that Azamar character because that was really cool. But I kind of like the idea of being a barbarian again, just with some flowing black hair. That'd be cool. Just that, because that way I could just play that character and not have to think about all these other complexities. Because add the complexities to add the flavor whenever you feel like it, wherever you want to. But I guarantee everyone comes back to the core, and they always do the simple things. It's like the love of technology, which I've ranted about before. We actually had a player just recently who uses D&D Beyond. There was a change to something. They didn't catch the change. He realized at the table. He's like, "Oh my god, what the hell? That they added this thing. Oh, I totally didn't know that. Oh, cool. Okay, well, let us know. Like, whatever, But here's the thing: you, me, anyone else at that table are not freaking out, going, "Oh my god, you had 1 extra point in 1 stat. Oh, that never come back, you jerk!" Like, no, that would not happen. It's like, oh well, whatever, But the reliance on the technology, and that's the part that bugs me, because I've gone back to pencil and paper and erasers, and I'll screw things up, and I'm going to mess things up because I don't read one of the supplements or whatever. But you know what? I don't care. I'm still going to punch that door until it falls down on 1 roll, and I'm going to enjoy having done that. And then I'm going to go through that door, and then I'm going to punch the next creature that tries to kill me. Like, there you go. It's pretty simple, because I don't think that their D&D was very complicated at all. Maybe some of the rules, but at the end of the day, you just want to punch something in the face as it tries to punch you in the face. So there you go.
Or if you're one of your many smaller characters, climb up onto them and bite them in the head.
Stab, 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 stab. I love halflings that can climb like that and just stab repeatedly until hopefully the creature that goes and throws them off or falls down and dies.
Yeah.
But
we're going to do that to all these myths about D&D.
So what else? Other myths should we discuss here? I'm just bringing up the list.
Oh, that's the list.
That's the whole list. Yeah, I mean, here's the problem. Justifying their existence in order to create a game. The one thing, here's my major problem with Wizards of the Coast. For the last umpteen number of years, since 2014, there have been a lot of updates to books, to adventures that I played when I was 15, which I appreciated. I'm like, great. But I don't recall really a lot of books that have been published over the last decade have actually been really brand new, hot off the press. It's all been regurgitating, updating something, but nothing brand new came to the game. And here's the problem. No one cared. The players were having fun. The players could say, you know what? I had that book when I was 15. Mm-hmm. Do I really need to buy it again? Well, you know what? I'm going to buy it because I want to support Wizards. But now, instead of taking this opportunity for the last few years and saying, all right, most of the really popular stuff that has been published since 1978 has been updated. But you know what we should do? We should create some new stuff. We should create some new adventures. We should release a few of them for free. We should get people to play them so we can get an idea of not just our in-house play testers or whoever we partner with, people out in the wild. Here's an adventure it's almost done. It's not quite done. But here, I would like you to play it. And then later on, once you've refined it, got some feedback, release it as a hardcover book. Because people would probably buy it more often than they would not. I mean, They
That's
want
why
to
we're making adventures now.
exactly. When you go and screw over your fan base and your player base, all you're doing is giving birth to Cawood Publishing, Pazzo, or whatever they're called, however you pronounce their names. Sorry, guys. Um, Kobold, like all these other small presses, whether you love them or not, they are born out of the fact that they want to add to a game that they love, and they're trying their very best to make products that they hope will appeal to a broader audience so that they can actually add to the mythos. They can create their own adventures, add their own creatures, do all these things. And that's going to happen anyway. But if you do it out of anger, if you piss people off that are supporting you and they do, suddenly you have what happened with the whole OGL thing. Like, that was the turning point of Wizards. They should have said, we made a really big mistake. Guys, what we're gonna do right away? We're gonna stop what we're doing. We're gonna reverse that idea. We're not gonna whiffle waffle for the next month and a half. We're gonna say sorry. You're right. Here are some ideas that we're gonna have for some new products. That are gonna be coming out. Not a new rules book. Not a new monster manual, not a new whatever. We're going to add to the mythos we've already generated. Actually, you were saying earlier about the number of errata that's coming out, like all of the corrections that are coming out of our book that just came out, where, guys, your book just came out. Did you did read it before you published it, right? Like, I mean, granted, I haven't looked at the correction list. Have you seen it? Is it officially published?
Yeah, it's pages and pages for the new monster manual before it came out.
I don't know. To me, that's just embarrassing, and kind of makes you wonder about quality control with a lot of this stuff. Now, granted, yes, I know I've worked with publishers. I've done publishing myself. I know that it's a hard job. But when you have a bunch of staff and you're creating 3 books, I don't know. You kind of feel like they should be a bit more prepared. I mean, I'm nitpicking, but still, I think that being prepared is great, and you really need to be able to show your best hand first. Not, oh yeah, by the way, we screwed this up a lot, and here's a bunch pages and pages of corrections. Yeah, the book's come. Rather than saying, hey, maybe we should not publish this yet. Maybe we should hold off. Or maybe we should... Actually, didn't they do that with the player's manual? The player manual that was falling apart really, really, really quickly? Like the binding had failed or something. And they turned around and said, hey, by the way, if you have a book where the binding has failed, that was whatever run it was for the player's manual, probably, I don't know, 5, 6, 8 years ago. And initially I think they replaced a bunch of them because it's like, yeah, we gave you a faulty product, so here's a replacement.
Yeah, but that wasn't the content of the book. That was just because the binding was really bad.
Well, exactly. But that was their reaction. It wasn't like, oh well, you're gonna have to keep the book. You have to buy another one.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I feel like today's Wizards would actually do now. Like, sorry guys, yeah, sorry, yeah, no, we're not gonna because that's going to hurt their sales too. It's like you're just letting everyone know not to buy your book until the corrections come out.
I'm not sure what this edition is supposed to do. So that was, with all these, again, there's so many myths that affect what happened with this book and what the current state of the official game is. And most of them they're not true. They're like, and people who know the game would know it's not true.
I am sad. I for a brief moment, when I heard that these new books were coming out, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, or however long it's been, I was excited. I was looking forward to it. I thought, hey, this is going to be cool. And then the OGL happened. And then we started seeing covers that were released accidentally, and then the woke mob decided that they were going to run the store. And I mean,
Well, that's
I'm sure
unfortunately in a few years. I mean,
true.
there's some of that already in 2014, like the art in the 2014 core books is just horrible and already has an obvious agenda. Um, but the thing is that they have the name, we have the game, and people
That is
need to know
true. Oh, I
people
love
have the
that.
game, and they know the game. They're going to keep playing, and it's just on one level, it's amusing and entertaining to watch whatever they're doing because we're not sure what it is. Um, because we're just going to keep playing our game.
I agree, and I suspect that we're going to have to create a brand new one, not as us individuals, as in anyone who's loved D&D for a very long time. Um, let's open source. What is it? Open. What do we call it? Open gaming, open table. I've forgotten exact. Not open table,
Open gaming, yeah,
but
yeah,
essentially like just saying, look, you can't. I mean, ultimately, hey, wizards, you can't copyright recipes and or rules. You could only copyright what it looks like. So you know what? We could just take the same rules, the ones that we like, improve them as a collective, and release an open source game system that anyone can use for nothing. So anyway, I mean that's already happening, by the way. But I'm just saying that uh, it would be the writing is on the wall, wizards, and I think that you need to really fix your game, your future ideas about the game, because you're going, I don't know where you're going. You're going somewhere, and I don't think many people are going to follow. Um, because here's the thing: when new players come to the table and they're like, "Oh yeah, I just learned about this game in the last little while," and they'll be having us grizzled old people going, "Let me tell you about what the real game is all about." Like,
yeah. Well, yeah, the game is going to survive for sure. So it might have different names, but there's still a lot of people enjoying it.
and I'm glad for that because I'm still enjoying it, and I don't. It doesn't need to be as complex as it's not just about the game itself, but about the community. Like it doesn't need to be that hard. It
For
needs to
sure.
be, it's not everyone is going to play the same way, and that's okay. But at the same time, it's like grab a sword and stab some orc in the face, or I don't know, kobold, or whoever's really hassling you. Lizard men are really good for getting stabbed in the face because you can skin them and make really cool armor. But yeah, I think,
Well, our plan is to make, several adventures that can bring a lot more to your table too. So um, we'll put it in the link there for the Ghosts of Wrath, the new one that's coming. And then the other two are well on their way.
which is awesome, and I'm looking forward to them. I'm looking forward to play testing it as well. By the way, I'm sure that we're not doing that yet.
Well, you definitely were part of playtesting the first two adventures, but I think the third one, most of it I won't do that because our group, yeah, I think it's better for the campaign that you start to explore where you are because the third
Yeah,
adventure is in a very different place. And I could like do the old you guys travel through the portal and now you're in another world and then I could do that every time and just time travel you or send you through a portal to a new adventure. But I like campaigns where things make sense and they grow organically. So the
yeah.
campaign we're doing right now, which is taking place in Zog in the world of Mir, that one we're going to allow that to grow organically as opposed to dropping you through a portal into another adventure.
At the end of the day, it's just a game, people, and it's supposed to be fun. And as much as Andrew and I like to really dump all over Wizards of the Coast, I'm sure there's some great people working there. I'm sure their hearts are in the right place. but ultimately, when it comes to the game itself, there's definitely a huge component, a lack of foresight as to what this game is about. But that doesn't mean you can't play. And that doesn't mean you can't figure it out. That doesn't mean you can't have fun. And you can have our podcast here. There are so many other podcasts that are really good that talk about very similar things, talk about different elements, all that kind of thing. So get out there and sort of make your own choices about how this game should be played. Because ultimately, it's really just some dice and some cool people. So, and a pencil and paper. But and unpainted figures. That's actually really important. But anyway, any final words about the Kickstarter, or sorry, about the not Kickstarter, the backer kit, or anything else?
Yes, the new adventure is coming very soon, 2 weeks. So just check the link below if you want to join in to follow along with it. And it'll be
Excellent.
live in 2 weeks when you can back it. And yeah, very excited to get more of these adventures out there, more content.
Rock and roll.
We
Well,
have the
thank you
game.
all. We do, because, as I always say, people, it's just a game. Thank you all for watching. Of course, this podcast is presented by Cawood Publishing at worldofmyr.com. That's myrr.com. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Chat later. Bye, everybody.
Later.